Our first presenter from Zerto. Jonathan Jones is responsible for enterprise sales for the Northeast region for Zerto, a next-generation business continuity and disaster recovery business. Prior to joining Zerto, Jonathan was an account manager for international computerware and integrated data storage. Please welcome Jonathan Jones.
Thank you very much, Julia. So we'll be talking about disaster recovery, business continuity today. Obviously, thank you very much to Oxford Networks for putting on such a great event today. Thank you very much for all of you for attending. Hopefully this will be informative. If you do have questions, I'll be over at the booth with the banner and the t-shirts. If you want some t-shirts, pens, data sheets, all that stuff's available to you guys. What we will be talking about is a new approach to disaster recovery and business continuity today. Just a show of hands, anyone familiar with Zerto? Okay, you. That's very good. So as Craig and Al mentioned, IT is changing. The IT world has been changing over the last few years. So when IT changes, you need new approaches to different services within IT. So what Zerto provides is enterprise-class business continuity disaster recovery solution. We have a hypervisor-based replication methodology. So it's virtual replication, which is a new concept. Because we're looking at things at a different way in terms of application protection for business continuity disaster recovery, we're helping you solve the common challenges that you probably see today with your virtual infrastructure. What we're doing is new in the sense of replication, moving that up the stack into the hypervisor, but hypervisor-based products and services are not new. We've probably all seen over the last 5 to 7, 10 years, companies like Cisco with the Nexus 1000V, Trend Micro, Juniper with vShield integration. For your virtual infrastructure, specifically for your VMware virtual infrastructure, products and services have been moving to the hypervisor. Zerto is really following that trend, moving replication up the stack into the hypervisor. But it's important to note that we're talking about mission-critical applications that Zerto is affording you to protect. So enterprise-class features, things like recovery point objectives in the single digits of seconds. Talked about downtime of Amazon. Zerto allows you to protect a mission-critical application with single digit of seconds for recovery point objectives and single digits of minutes for recovery time objectives. So that's what we really mean by enterprise-class capabilities. So the product itself, Zerto Virtual Replication, it's 100% VM aware or virtual aware. It's very, very important to look for a solution when you're talking about protecting virtual infrastructure to make sure that that solution is virtually aware. So that way the efficiencies of our replication methodology as well as the uptime of the application, it's really a relationship between the two. Because we've moved replication into the hypervisor, we see everything about the applications we're protecting. The VM, the app, the OS, the virtual NIC, the virtual networks, the DNS, the subnet, everything that constitute an application from a virtual perspective, Zerto is aware of. So it's very, very important when you're looking at a new solution potentially for DR that it has the component of being virtually aware. We're also a software-only solution. So Zerto being software-only very easily installs into your environment today, whether you're a cloud provider like Oxford is, whether you're an enterprise that has multiple data centers, Zerto is an agile software-only solution. Tier 1 enterprise class, kind of talked about that a little bit, the ability to protect those mission-critical applications. But not only are we allowing you to protect those applications, but we're helping you automate the recovery process. So it's an end-to-end solution that protects your applications, protects the data behind those applications, and then automates that recovery process. The automated recovery process is really the special sauce with Zerto. The ability to have your application up and running in a few minutes helps you avoid costly end-user issues where someone deletes a table or you have a logical corruption of an application. You need that application recovered quickly and easily. Zerto allows you to do that with an automated user interface. One last thing I'll actually mention is some of the awards that you've seen both on our banners and on the slides. We're really being received very well from the industry, not only from a customer perspective, but industry analysts, partners, cloud service providers. And today we are purpose-built for virtual infrastructures specifically for VMware. We do have plans in 2014 to support both KVM and Citrix Xen. So we plan to be hypervisor agnostic, but today it's just for the VMware virtualized infrastructure. A few slides I'll talk about really the technical capabilities of Zerto, how the architecture is, how to protect applications, and how the automated features really show themselves to you, the end user. Very simple from our perspective. We support a single vCenter instance, multiple vCenter instances. So basically, if you have VMware installed and you have a couple of data centers, maybe it's managed under one vCenter instance, or you have that multiple vCenter instance, basic configuration is you have a Zerto Virtual Manager and you have a virtual replication appliance. You hear appliances all the time now, I think, whether it's a physical appliance or a virtual appliance. Zerto is that software appliance. It's that virtual appliance. It's a standalone Linux-based VM that gets installed onto your ESX and ESXi hosts. That appliance contains no data, does all the replication. So consider it a dumb VM that sits on your host. The virtual manager is really the brains of the entire operation. That's a Windows-based VM that gets installed into the ESX environment as well. It really has a handshake transaction with vCenter itself. It shows itself to the end user as a tab within vCenter. So the virtual manager, the brains of the operation, allows you to create all policies. And those policies are relative to specific VMs that make up applications, and then the recovery point, recovery time objective that you'd like those applications to achieve. So that's kind of why we call it the brains of the operations, where you initiate failovers and whatnot. But the replication is actually happening at the appliance level, at the vSCSI level. To get really technical, it's at the vSCSI level in memory on your host. And we do asynchronous replication from your production site to the target site, and then we journal the I/O write. That I/O write is essentially associated with a block level write. So you're going to have continuous data protection for each application that you deem as mission critical, tier 1, maybe even tier 2, and apply that recovery point and recovery time objective. It's all going to be associated back with a journal. It's going to give you that TiVo or DVR-like capability per application to say, wow, we had a power outage, Sandy hit, and I want to do disaster avoidance. Replicate to a single point in time, from a single point in time to your DR location, or maybe the more common scenario is you have a developer or some application owner that deletes a table, or there's a logical corruption of an application. You need to recover that specific application. Zerto's journal allows you to roll back to right before that corruption happened and recover that application seamlessly and within minutes. So I'll build this all out for time purposes, just so you can see a bunch of different benefits that come with a hypervisor-based disaster recovery approach for your virtual infrastructure. The biggest one that most people are drawn to is the fact that we're hardware agnostic. So if you have EMC in your environment today and you're thinking about purchasing some IBM storage or NetApp storage, Zerto allows you to reuse that existing hardware that you've already made an investment in. So we're 100% hardware agnostic from EMC to IBM, from any manufacturer to any manufacturer, as well as the cloud. Today you could own your own enterprise data centers, and in a couple of years you're going to be making the transition to the Oxford cloud. Zerto is that agile software solution that can protect both your enterprise data center today as well as replicate to a cloud, being hardware agnostic. Software only. Now software only, I talked about being agile. It's also extremely easy to install for trial or proof of concept purposes or production installations. It takes about 30 minutes. There's 0 professional services associated with Zerto. So that's really a game changer when you're talking about disaster recovery. Enterprise class DR that installs in 30 minutes over WebEx or GoToMeeting, and there's no professional services. That's a little bit of a different conversation than I think a lot of us are used to having when we're talking about a complex solution or complex scenario where you need a solution that can solve BCDR. recovery point objectives in the single digits of seconds in that point-in-time recovery capability. We're doing so without the negative impact that you're probably used to. No performance impact to your production applications. So you have a mission-critical application that you can't afford necessarily dark fiber and have fault tolerance and synchronous replication. Zerto allows you to protect that application without the negative impact that most manufacturers really require, which is performance impact, performance penalty. So zero performance impact with Zerto, no agents that you have to manage or anything of that nature. That point-in-time recovery capability via the journal also is doing that without any reliance on VMware snapshotting technology, IBM, EMC, any manufacturer's snapshotting technology. So there's no infrastructure impact when you're talking about installing Zerto, having it replace the solution you might have, or when you're evaluating a first-time DR solution. There's no negative storage impact, no negative infrastructure impact when it comes to Zerto. We also compress and throttle that I/O that I was talking about, those block-level writes. We compress and throttle that so that we're able to replicate over a small connection. Minimum of a 5 megabit connection is all you need from Zerto to the Oxford cloud or to in between your two data centers. So if you don't think that you can build out your data center and you want to replicate to the Oxford cloud, the link doesn't need to be dark fiber, or the link between your two data centers doesn't need to be super expensive. We can replicate and recover across small bandwidth. So it's really all about the application. When you're talking about business continuity, disaster recovery, it's not about replicating data and saying that you have data at one site and then another site. That's great. That's all well and good. But data is a means to an end. It's all about the application. It's all about that mission-critical application that drives the business. So with Zerto, we took that new approach. Through the user interface that's very intuitive and easy to use, you're able to select single VMs or groups of VMs and define them as your application. Very, very simple. As opposed to the old way of doing things that is very restrictive and costly and time-consuming and complex. You have to map data stores and LUNs to hosts and applications, and it's really all or nothing. It's not flexible, and that's a problem when you're talking about that logical corruption or just the simple need for a flexible solution. So Zerto, taking this new approach to protecting applications, allows you to create what we call virtual protection groups. Each virtual protection group can have its own group policy and configuration, not just the recovery point objective, that amount of data that you're willing to lose, or that recovery time objective, the ability to have that application up and running, but additional things like boot order, the DNS, the reconfiguration of IP addresses when you're replicating over to your Oxford cloud or your own secondary data center. Those manual interventions are really the things that hold up application availability. So Zerto allows you to define them per application, whether it's a test bubble network, your DR network, so that the net result is availability of that application. We also fully support things like vMotion, storage vMotion, distributed resource scheduler, basically the advanced functionality of VMware. We're aligned with the virtualization strategy. We're not restricted. So you create the virtual protection group. Of course, replication starts, and the important part to note is whether it's a single application, single VM making up that application, or a group of VMs that make up an application, multi-tiered application. Zerto ensures write order fidelity and application consistency, which is very important when you're talking about either the test or the failover scenario, that you don't get that blue screen of death or the purple screen of death, and that application's not available. Zerto ensures write order fidelity so that when you bring up that application in that bubble network, you're going to be able to validate that the application's available and recovered at the point in time and in the consistency fashion that you require before you're going to release that out to your end users. Automated failover process. It's really a staple of Zerto. So we talked about how we're different than really array-based replication today, replicating at the hypervisor, creating consistency groups, virtual protection groups for your applications. Well, now it's all about automated recovery process. The reason that you want to automate recovery, why customers look into products like Site Recovery Manager or a fault tolerance, is to avoid the manual intervention, reduce the risk associated with recovering an application. So Zerto has this built into the software. When you purchase Zerto, There's no reason to have array-based replication, snapshotting technology. There's also no reason to purchase a site recovery manager, a point solution that just does automation. Zerto provides that out of the box. Being 100% virtually aware, as I mentioned, we see everything about your VM, about your application, more to the point. The virtual NICs, virtual networks, virtual disk. Very efficient in the way that we replicate. So essentially we're replicating over small I.O., journaling that I.O. Where that also shows itself is the recovery process. Being virtually aware, the recovery process is really as quickly as those VMs can be booted up and turned on, powered on, Zerto is essentially going to achieve that recovery time objective. As I mentioned, each application you can define things like the boot order, the DNS, the subnet, the MAC address, the virtual NICs, virtual networks, all that can be defined per application so that when you initiate a test failover or a live failover, that application is available and all of those manual interventions that you have to go through today can be completely avoided. Al also talked about testing that DR plan. Zerto allows you to test your DR plan non-disruptively. So your production applications can be up and running. It can be 9 a.m. on a Monday, and Exchange can be getting hammered, and you can say, I want to test out to see if we have a Sandy coming, or I know that there could be a potential issue with an application. You want to test out how a recovery process works. You can bring up that application in a bubble network, define bubble network at your DR site, and have production applications still up and running and accessed by end users. Changes are still going to be happening, of course, because the end user is going to be accessing it. Those changes from a Zerto perspective are still seen, tracked, and journaled. So non-disruptive testing, essentially giving you the ability to refine your business continuity disaster recovery plan to the point where you're going to get it right when that DR scenario happens. Because you're practicing it once a week, once a month, whenever you'd like to, but doing so non-disruptively, not having to, tell the end users, by the way, at 4 o'clock on Friday, your applications are going to be unavailable, so you can't do work over the weekend. You can't have that efficiency that you're used to because we're going to do our DR test. It's really not a DR test when you have to tell the entire business that we're going to test the applications and shut down the systems. Zerto allows you to test at any time that you'd like, non-disruptively. We also allow you to clone those tested VMs. Clone functionality is a very popular feature that Zerto introduced with our 1.0. By the way, we're reintroducing Zerto with our 3.0 release. But the cloning feature on 1.0 was so popular because it really incorporated an application protection strategy in with backups. You can have a fully read-writable instance of that tested VM at that point in time, whether it's 12 o'clock on a Monday or any point in time via that journal. You can clone that VM, point that VM or application at a data domain, an Avamar, an Exagrid, a master media server to do your offsite backup. So essentially Zerto allows you to protect, recover applications, but it also incorporates into a backup strategy, taking the load off of production and putting it onto your DR site. Out of the box, Zerto supports a multi-site, multi-tenancy architecture. So whether you have sites all over the place, you guys are a large enterprise, or if you're an SMB customer, really as little as 15 VMs all the way up to thousands of VMs can be supported with Zerto. If you're less than 15 VMs and you're really looking to do DR with the cloud, Zerto supports cloud. Oxford Networks is one of our premium partners with the cloud. So if you have just 5 or 6 VMs that are mission critical that you want to have the insurance replicated to the Oxford cloud, Zerto supports that out of the box. Very simple, easy to use user interface. So now when you're talking about single user interface, predictability when it comes to DR, no longer do you have to manage snapshotting technology with your storage manufacturers, whichever storage manufacturer it is. Now everything's all about vSphere. The vCenter console is very intuitive, so now you're managing applications and DR out of one single user interface. Tasks and events all managed through vCenter, so you can report from a compliance perspective, which is very key when you're talking about DR and reporting back to the business saying, I can do DR and here's how I can prove it. And then alerting as well, that single user interface, not having your end users, your IT administrators, having 5 or 6 things to manage. When they have 5 or 6 things different to manage, essentially you're talking about the risk, the complexity. And that's where Zerto really reduces the risk, reduces the complexity to help you have a predictable, easy to manage business continuity process. You could have spent $1 million+ on DR today with the solutions offered today. And this is the process that you're probably going to go through per application. A lot of moving parts there. A lot of things to dot I's, cross T's, make sure everything's mapped up the right way. When you're talking about hosts, data stores, and LUNs, if you make a change from a virtual perspective, did you make sure that change went all the way through to the host, to the LUN, to the storage replication, to the automated recovery point solution that you might have purchased? It's not very good when you're talking about something that needs to work instantaneously when you lose power, when you need that mission-critical application available. So Zerto simplifies DR. One click, you're going to initiate that test failover with a live failover. Really simplify the entire process. You went to virtualization to get that flexibility. We're in line with that. You have VMs to make up applications. Different applications have different needs to the business, different service level agreements that you want to deliver to the business. Zerto allows you to define that per application, really with basic requirements. If you have 10 terabytes at production, you're going to want 10 terabytes at DR, but not a lot of the complexities of additional storage to manage snapshotting at production, making sure that you have the same storage at your disaster recovery site. Simplify things. Really all about simplification. It's also about cost avoidance or savings. So whether it's the cloud, whether it's Zerto, everyone's trying to talk to you about, how I can save you money. Zerto, replicating at the hypervisor, saves you money from a storage perspective. You're no longer managing data stores and LUNs, so we have a storage impact, a positive storage impact is kind of the way to describe it. Atlantic Fund Services, great customer of Oxford, great customer of Zerto. They saw the value of Zerto, wanted an agile software solution that could replicate from their production site to the DR site. That DR site happened to be the Oxford Cloud. They wanted to run their own DR and just point it towards the Oxford Cloud. Zerto was that solution. We still allowed them to protect their mission-critical applications, though, that I think is the point. The ability to protect that mission-critical app, have that recovery point, recovery time objective, point it to whatever data center they wanted to. Zerto was that flexible solution that they selected. Another financial institution, HAPO Credit Union, actually have a case study over at the table if you guys want to pick one up. One thing I'll say here is whether it's AFA, whether it's HAPO, ING, AIG, McAfee, customers can really be across the gamut in terms of industries. There's no specific vertical that Zerto needs to support. Financial insurance, healthcare, legal firms, those are kind of the who's who of, really who's looking into Zerto, and you can kind of see why. From a billing perspective, if you're a law firm, hospitals, from a billing, radiology, availability of that application, or as Al had mentioned, trading firms, financial institutions, insurance companies. Of course, we understand that those are the typical companies that care about DR. But what I've noticed is a lot of manufacturing firms, a lot of software as a service companies, they're looking into Zerto as well because we are that agile, flexible solution for BCDR that really simplifies things for them. So it really is a new approach to business continuity disaster recovery because we're virtually aware. We're ready for the cloud today. So whether you're talking about your own private cloud, Zerto supports it. A hybrid cloud environment, Zerto supports it. Or the public cloud. We consider Oxford to be kind of that hybrid right there, where it might be viewed to you as the public cloud, but Zerto supports it. So whether you're talking about your private, public, or hybrid cloud, we're supporting it. Any questions? Thank you very much.